I'd like to welcome you all to tonight's regular meeting of the Vail School District Governing Board. I call it to order at 7:07 p.m. Thanks for your patience. Our first item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please join. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes. Consideration of approving the minutes from the regular governing board meeting on May 14th, 2024 as presented. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll motion.
Mrs. Pratt moves.
I'll second.
And Mrs. Anderson seconds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is general functions, staff, student, and community recognitions. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Tippett, members of the board. It is summertime, so we don't have any special announcements, and our staff are mostly scattered or enjoying family at the moment. So we have no recognitions from them other than just some district-wide recognitions that I'd like to make. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge Pima County Treasurer Chris Ackerley is in the audience this evening here to just be available and support. We've had lots of conversations with Mr. Ackerley and his staff over the last month or so, and they've been incredibly helpful as we work through reconciliations issues with the Pima County School Superintendent's Office. So thank you for that. Also, I just want to acknowledge the exceptionally smooth end of our school year. This is our first board meeting post end of the school year. Been doing this for a long time, and I'm struggling to recall an ending of the school year that went quite as smooth. And I just want to, I know you all attended numerous graduations and promotion ceremonies, as did I. I was counting them up. It was somewhere between 12 and 15 total. I remarked to several people, there's a lot of cynicism in the world, and the cure for cynicism is attending graduation and promotion ceremonies. You cannot leave those without feeling hopeful and encouraged by our future, our young people, and those our staff who invest in them. So I just want to thank all of our staff for making that happen. All of those events require an incredible amount of work, and acknowledge them for the smooth end of our school year. That's all I have for staff, student, and community recognitions this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Next item on the agenda is call to the public. At this time, the board may consider and discuss comments and concerns from the public. Those wishing to address the governing board on items not on tonight's agenda may do so at this time. Do not have any requests to speak, or is anybody in the audience that wishes to address the board on items on tonight's agenda or not on tonight's agenda? Not seeing any, we'll go ahead and move forward to correspondence and reports. So we'll start with the superintendent's report. Mr. Cruz.
Yeah, the first, I just want to report that summer school is up and running, and we have right around 1,000 high school students taking summer school courses. So when I think about that, roughly 20-ish% of our high school students are engaged in summer school. And that is a huge number, and that has been a sustained kind of interest in summer school over the last couple of years. I think the interest peak went up after the pandemic, and I think this is a trend that we're just going to continue to see. In many, many ways, it's becoming our third semester of high school. So I just want to report on that, and that's going well. Also want to report that we're getting lots of information about the state budget that's coming out, and it is not yet finalized and has not gone to the floors of each respective houses of the legislature. But it looks like things are coming together. The sausage is being put into the casing, so to speak. And what we are seeing are that the components of the budget that we were expecting to be in there and hoping to be in there, especially regarding inflationary increases, statutory inflationary increases for the budget for education are in there. So related to next month's our required proposal of a budget, we're in good shape. Looks like we're in good shape. So I just wanted to call that out. That's all I have for superintendent's report.
All right. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is board reports. Do any board members have a report that they would like to share? Mr. Buster has been busy.
Trying to stay out of trouble and off the streets. First and foremost, I want to say congratulations to every high school graduate, their families, friends, teachers, administrators, and staff. Successful student outcomes are a community effort. It was indeed a privilege to attend graduations and celebrate their accomplishments and seeing them taking the leap into the next chapter of their lives. Wishing every graduate measurable success in every future endeavor. I also want to say thank you, sincere thank you, to every Vail educator, maintainer, transporter, and staff. Every one of these young people owes you a debt of gratitude, specifically to you because they could not have done it without you. You are essential, you provide care, and you are very much appreciated. Last week, I did have the opportunity to attend the ASB Summer Institute in Flagstaff with Board Member King. In attendance, the conference had the opportunity to attend to further my professional development and was afforded opportunities to partner with school district board members, administrators, principals, staff throughout Arizona. We shared and compared contrasted opportunities, strategies, programs, policies, and successful student and educator outcomes. There were several individuals very impressed with the Vail Unified School District, our A+ school, Blue Ribbon schools, beyond textbook programs, tiny houses, the tiny house program, cyber pathway, and high percentage of high school graduates. They plan to come and visit Vail Unified School District as they gain best practices and assistance with their programs. It was great to see Dr. Billy Walker, information on Title I resources and aid, as well as a session with Dr. Jimmy Hart, who the board knows and embraces on a regular basis with 8 strategies and behaviors for Ray to encourage behaviors and district successes. And I, for one, had the opportunity with Rachel Cordova in regards to the first meeting of the Black Alliance, and it went swimmingly well. That's all I have.
Thank you. Really wonderful. Any other board members would like to share a report? Well, I don't know how we could more eloquently express than Mr. Buster did about how we feel about high school graduates and the massive crew that it takes to provide that education for kiddos. So I'm going to echo Mr. Buster's sentiments and thank you for doing that so wonderfully. And thank you for representing Vail and continuing to learn and develop as a board member. We appreciate that. So I will go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. All items listed below are consent matters and will be considered by one motion at this time. There will be no discussion of consent items. Any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda by request. All items not accepted and approved as part of the consent agenda will be considered individually. Do any board members wish to pull an item? Okay, not seeing any, I'll go ahead and ask Mr. Groot to make the recommendation.
Thank you, President Tippett. Members of the board, it's recommended that the Vail School District Governing Board approve all items on the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you. I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve as presented.
Mr. Buster moves.
I'll second.
And Mrs. Anderson seconds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is old business. And we do have an action item, Saguaro Creek K-8 school boundaries recommendation. Mr. Creek.
Thank you, President Tippett and members of the board. I'm just going to pop up the map and make sure I'm doing it in the boardroom and not my office. There we go. So this item was previously studied at the last board meeting. Our committee has been working on identifying attendance boundaries for Saguaro Creek K-8 for about a little over a month, probably 6 weeks, including the time period between board meetings. We also tasked that group with also looking at not just what's needed for the Saguaro Creek K-8, but also to ensure that we have stability of enrollment at Ocotillo Ridge Elementary School, Acacia Elementary School, and Old Vale Middle School, and look at respective growth in the region that are relative to those, to all of those schools. The committee has come back with a recommendation for an attendance boundary that looks like this. Fundamentally, it picks up the Rocking K neighborhood, which is here. And that neighborhood right now has somewhere in the neighborhood of about 600 homes that are completed, with a master plan on this side of the road of about 5,000 homes, the four family homes anyways. And so we are expecting significant growth from this area. And so we wanted to be careful that we didn't draw a boundary that was too big, that we then in later years need to trim this down. The committee feels that this area, which is the original Rocking K, Thunderhead Ranch, and then a few of the homes along Irvington, roughly the area that's east of the Pantano Wash and abuts the Rocking K neighborhood, would also come over. There's not that many students in that area, is a safe way to go. We have sent communication to all impacted families in those areas to notify them, and have heard nothing back. No questions or concerns. I think that they pretty well understood that that was a likely outcome of what was going to happen. I will just say that this attendance boundary in year one will not produce that many students, probably somewhere around 250, which is a very low number to start a new school. So we'll probably, I know Mrs. Robold would like more than that, but we also need to be cautious that we're not draining other schools to do that. We also know, so it's just acknowledging that now that the school may run a little inefficiently in that first year, but we know that we're gaining about 50 to 60 students per year out of the Rocking K neighborhood alone. This isn't a boundary. This is kind of walking up against the boundary of this agenda item per se. But one of the reasons that we went at this point to open the school in 2025 is that we're just simply could not have more students at Ocotillo Ridge the following year, and there weren't really any great places to move them that weren't very far away. That would have been significantly disruptive. The second reason is our dollars for the construction project were fixed, and with inflation, we were simply losing value on those dollars. So we are gambling a little bit on that to ensure that we get the maximum amount of school that we can for the dollars that we have, knowing that we'll be a little early and that it will fill, but that's where we're at. So anyways, I'll go back to, just wanted to pop that up for questions. Happy to answer any other questions relative to those boundaries. But with that, I'll make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve designated neighborhoods by the Saguaro Creek School Boundary Committee as presented. Further, that the board approve grandfathering transportation for one additional year for families in these areas who choose to stay at Ocotillo Ridge Elementary School and or Old Vale Middle School for one additional year, 25-26 school year, as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Caruth. I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve as presented.
Mr. Buster Moon.
I'll second.
And Mrs. Pat seconds. Any comments or questions? Thanks for giving us the opportunity to study it, and also giving the community the opportunity to be aware of the item and this change for their families. And it sounds like folks might just be excited about having their kiddo attend a new school. So.
Yep.
On that, I'll go ahead and call for the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is new business. RFP 25-002-29 Food Service Management Company Fixed Price. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Tippett and members of the board. We are coming to the end of our 5-year contract with Airmark for our food services. We knew that that was in place, and we are required at the end of that time to go out for a RFP, or request for proposals, which we actually issued in January, mid-January of this school year. It's a long process. We did that. We emailed 10 different food service management groups, of which 4 responded to the RFP. We have to work very closely with the Arizona Department of Education on that process and actually follow their rubric as far as how the selection process is made. We do our process, and of which we're required. We pull together a committee of individuals to help vet that solicitation. That group began that process of viewing those things in April, and then also conducting the interviews. We had, just so you understand who was on that committee, it was Jason Campos, principal of Acacia Elementary School, Nancy Davis, who was a parent and volunteer in our district, Aneemer Hassey, who's principal at Micah Mountains, Sarah Jarvis, who's a procurement analyst here, the district office, Chris King, who's a board member representative, Rebecca Marsh is a principal, and then Debbie Penn, our deputy superintendent, all comprised that committee. After going through that lengthy process, the committee's highest score and recommendation is to continue with Airmark for the next 5-year cycle, of which it will be a 1-year contract renewable for each additional year for 4 years. We had to send that back through ADE and wait for our attorneys and all those things, and back and forth with Airmark. So here we are in June to issue that. So I'll go ahead and make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board award the fiscal year 24-25 contract for Food Service Management Company RFP 25-002-29 to the vendor Airmark Educational Services, Inc. as presented.
Thank you. I'll accept a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
Mrs. Anderson moves,
I'll second.
and Mrs. Pratt seconds. Any comments or questions? Mrs. Pratt.
I just want to thank those who served on the committee. That's a great committee of really involved and active, whether it's employees or community members. And I know that's a huge time commitment, and I know it's a lengthy process. So thank you for participating on that.
This is one of our most significant contracts that we work with, and it matters every day. Who is taking care of our kiddos, and it's really important that I think it's a high microscope that looks at that, or a high resolution microscope that looks at that, so that we make sure that we're making the best decision for our district and for our kiddos and our families. I appreciate the service of Airmark over the years, and remember when we made the change several years ago, and grateful for the opportunity to keep things nice and steady for the community.
I do want to acknowledge Michelle Quiros and Tori Gamble in particular, both from the finance side and the procurement side, who really, while the committee was tasked with the work, Michelle and Tori were the ones that needed to line everything up, and then have been working to execute the contract, which has been a boatload of work and boatload of back and forth with multiple agencies. So be remiss if I didn't acknowledge them as well.
Thank you. All right, any other potential questions? Not seeing any, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Okay, next item on the agenda is the 2024-2025 employment contracts for returning professional staff. Mr. Group.
Thank you, President Tippett, members of the board. Mrs. Dabney.
Thank you, President Tippett, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. On tonight's agenda, there are two contract items that we need to go over to begin the 24-25 school year. And they're before you tonight for action, which is very exciting for us because it speaks to kind of where we're at with the planning of the new year, but also speaks to months of a lot of work, so by a lot of people. So the first is the 24-25 employment contracts for returning professional staff. Our assistant directors, our BT professional staff, district nurses, technology professionals, and the other non-site based professional positions are included in this employment group. The 24-25 contracts will be issued at a 3% pay increase pursuant to the pay increase that was approved by the governing board on May 14th. And that's really kind of the big change with the contract. There's a few other changes that I wanted to just speak about quickly as well. If you remember, we also studied previously, there's a handful of employees that are in this employee group that receive a car allowance as part of their contract because their duties require significant travel to and between our school sites. Administration is recommending a 19% increase in the car allowance amounts for those individuals that receive one. We're recommending this increase because all other employees in the district that have to travel within for their duties are reimbursed at a per mile amount. That per mile amount is set by the Arizona Department of Administration, and that amount has increased significantly over the last few years. In fact, over the last 4 years, it's gone up by about 50%. Our individuals that receive a car allowance, to my knowledge, that car allowance hadn't been increased really in at least 10 years. And we know that the price of gas and the price of travel expenses have increased significantly, and they're not able to put in for that per mile reimbursement that other employees can. So we are recommending that increase for our professional staff that receive a car allowance. And really, the cost of that increase is included in the proposed FY25 budget. And so we know that that's something that we accounted for. And it's not a significant amount. We were looking at 15,900 overall for that. So I believe that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions. With that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Katie. With that, I'll make the recommendation the Vail School District Governing Board approve issuing contracts for the 24-25 fiscal year to the professional staff as presented.
I'll accept a motion.
So moved.
Mrs. Pratt moves.
Seconded.
And Mr. Buster seconds. Any comments or questions? Mrs. Anderson.
Just that, we've been able to take time to study this. And so I appreciate, obviously it's coming here, but just the time that we had to ask questions. So I don't have any questions today. Just thank you for sitting with us and going over it and answering our questions. So thanks, Katie.
Any other comments or questions? All right. With that, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the 2024-2025 employment contracts for returning administrative staff. Mr.
Mrs. Dabney.
Thank you, President, Mr. Cruz, the members of the board. And this is the last contract item for the 24-25 school year for our last employee group, our administrative staff. So the 24-25 employment contracts for returning administrative staff includes our assistant principals, our directors, our chief officer position, our assistant superintendent, and our deputy superintendent. The 24-25 contracts will be issued with a 3% pay increase as previously approved by the governing board. And really that's kind of the main change with the administrative contracts. However, there is one other piece that we studied earlier as well. Administration is recommending a 50% increase for assistant principals and principals that meet their site leadership goals and their leadership incentive. which is the performance pay that principals receive when their school receives an A or a B label. As you know, we've increased the 301 gold payments amounts and the evaluation performance pay amount for our teachers and other eligible employee categories. However, we've not increased the performance pay for our principals and our assistant principals since we began the leadership incentive many, many years ago. Like the last agenda item, administration is also recommending that the 19% car allowance for the eligible administrative staff also be included. The costs associated with these increases are included in the proposed FY25 budget.
Thank you. And with that, I'll make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve issuing contracts for the 2024-2025 fiscal year to the administrative staff as presented.
Thank you. I'll go ahead and accept a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
Mrs. Anderson moves
Seconded.
and Mr. Buster seconds. Any comments or questions about this item? Mr. Buster.
You mentioned has been quite a few years. Can you give me about how many years since the last increase?
Mrs. Dabney?
Thank you, President Tippett, members of the board, Mr. Buster. I don't believe that amount's been increased whatsoever since the inception of the incentive pay plan for administrators.
Which would have been at the exception of 301, which goes back to
1990s?
Yeah, no, 2000, somewhere between 2005 and 2010. I think somewhere in that, bulbs up, somewhere in there.
Little earlier than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? Not seeing any, we'll go ahead and call for the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is updating advanced placement psychology books. Mr. Hurley, who's been enjoying his summer?
Yeah.
Mrs. Peterson said my glasses would block this. So yeah, President Tippett, scrutiny with the board, as they do periodically, AP updates exams and course descriptions. And when they do that, we like to update our textbooks to give the kids the best chance to pass the test. As you know, one of AP is to have a chance to pass the test. So when they make updates, we like to react. And so we have a committee coming together. And this is really just all kind of to be overly transparent. Governing board policy says we have to put something on the website that says the books are on display, and we did it a month ago, but we just want to make sure that people knew that they were here and they're on display and they had a chance to weigh in. They'll be on display until July the 8th. And on July the 9th, we'll bring you guys a recommendation based on community feedback and based on our advisory committee of teachers that teach the subject. The only other reminder is we get separate funding from the state to purchase AP textbooks. So we don't usually bring textbooks, but really it's AP that we get separate funds. And so we want to make sure that the kids have the best stuff in their hands.
This is an informed item. Just as Mr. Hurley said, the books are on display here in the district office and all that information is on the website. Just wanted to bring it forward. Happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions? Mrs. Anderson.
Thanks. So with that, is there a specific book that's like updated and then this is the one to use state like nationwide, or is there like different options to choose from?
Mr. Hurley?
Yeah, President Tippett, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. There is an entire marketplace that spends their whole life trying to figure out how to make books for the AP test.
Oh, that's
So
interesting.
every vendor out there has a regular psychology book and an AP psychology book.
Okay.
A regular biology book and an AP biology book. So they look at the new course description and the new exam description, and then they adjust their textbooks. So there's probably, I think, 5 textbooks that were submitted. When we do a request for proposal, we let it out to every vendor in the world. If you want to submit, submit. And all of them that submit get evaluated.
Okay.
Right. Mrs. Spratt.
I'm just curious, what happens to the old textbooks?
Mr. Hurley?
Yes, President Tippett, Mr. Cruz, members of the board, thank you for your tough questions. At some points on our consent agenda, you'll see disposals.
Yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes we're able to sell them for pennies on the dollar and give them to other places and do those things, but they're usually either disposed of and be sent to you guys or sold, but we can sell things like that. I'll be honest, not all states have separate money for AP textbooks. There was a time when Mrs. Penn and I brought textbooks every year and we did those things and it was massive, and there's a lot of states that haven't. So I'm sure there's a marketplace out there for books that are perfectly good. They're 4 years old. but they just aren't up to the latest greatest standards. But it's penny so far.
It's interesting. So, take a board member road trip to another state, deliver textbooks.
Any other comments or questions? All right, thank you for making it an agenda item and bringing it to the community's awareness. Next item on the agenda is creation of a new school, Vail Project Search. Mr. Caruth, I'm so excited about this.
Yes,
Whole new
thank you.
School.
A whole new school virtually sits at ADE. So it's not nearly as exciting as it sounds. This is truly a procedural matter of which Mr. Aaron Schmidt will help fill in the background. And Mr. Schmidt.
President Tippett, Mr. Caruth, members of the board, purely procedural, lower your expectations. We've received a recent ADE ruling that requires that certain programs that we offer within our district receive their own entity ID purely for student reporting information. As a plug for Project Search, it's a really outstanding program ran through the Pima County JTED. The requirements are that students have an IEP and that they spend their senior year with the Pima JTED working at various sites throughout the county. Because they're physically off-site from our school district, that program needs to have its own entity ID for us to be able to submit their ADM.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. I'll go, happy to answer more questions along that, but that's really the summary of it. And happy to answer more questions about Project Search if you have that, but I'll go ahead and make the recommendation the Vail School District Governing Board approve the creation of new school Vail Project Search as presented.
I'll accept a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
Mrs. Anderson moves.
A second.
And Mrs. Pratt seconds. Any questions?
So my question is about this, like, how many students, like, do we have in our district who are involved in this? I mean, I was reading up on it, and so it's pretty awesome to hear about.
So it varies year to year depending upon our students that are eligible. It's generally those that have completed at least 3 and sometimes 4 years of high school, but and have an IEP and are still eligible for and need additional transition services. But those services aren't appropriate to continue at a high school. So Project Search has been a great partner with that, and it's run through Pima JTED. There are several, I think 4 sites. Some of them are like Banner, UMC, and University. So it's a handful, less than 20, I would say, a year.
Say 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But important for these kids. That's
yeah.
awesome. Okay, awesome, thank you.
I appreciate the partnership with PJTED on this as well, and then creating opportunities for students and the community. I'm just wondering, like, is there going to be a logo? Does it go on the watershed? Like,
There will be a nice nifty new number in Power School that we communicate back and forth to ADE that allows us to get paid for those students that we were in threat of not getting paid for, or them not, more importantly, that they wouldn't be able to access those services. It's really critical services. And so it's just, this is really comes out of a ruling from the Department of Ed on their finance side that it needs an entity ID number in order for them to count their beans correctly. So we're doing that.
there we go. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any. Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is creation of another new school, Vail Inclusive Preschool at Micah Mountain Campus. Mr. Cleveland.
President Tippett, members of the board, not super seniors as I just talked about, but super incoming new kids to Vail and Vail Inclusive Preschool on the other end of the spectrum, Mr. Schmidt.
Equally unimpressive, very impressive. Equal with that same ruling, it's required that previously we'd submitted students through just a single Vail Inclusive Preschool entity, and due to the 2 addresses and 2 locations, President Tippett, Mr. Cleveland. We're required to do the same process and create an entity ID for all of the students that will be reported specifically from the Micah Mountain campus. So the Vail Inclusive Preschool at Micah Mountain.
Yeah, but fundamentally, we view that program as a single program, 2 campuses. But again, from a financial reporting component, they need 2 physical addresses. So this is just cleaning that piece up. So with that, I'll make the recommendation the Vail School District Governing Board approve the 2024-2025 Oh, that's wrong agenda item. Let me go back, sorry. That the Vail School District Governing Board approve the creation of new school Vail Inclusive Preschool Micah Mountain as presented.
I'll accept the motion.
Motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
And Mrs. Anderson seconds. Any comments or questions? Mr. Buster.
I just want to make sure that we'll be invited to those graduations.
Deal. Sounds reasonable.
If you can agree to be here for another 13, 14 years when they actually graduate, Mr. Buster, deal.
Any other comments or questions? All right, well, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Not seeing any.
Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Next item on the agenda is the 2024-2025 community programs and Vail Inclusive Preschool tuition fees. Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, President Tippett and members of the board. This is the one my fingers fumbled on as I was trying to, I skipped over. So Mrs. Bates.
Superintendent Cruz and members of the board, community programs and Vail Inclusive Preschool are recommending a 5% increase to our current fees for all programs. The increase will allow additional budget provisions for a couple of things that are taking place for staff raises. So we've got a 3% staff raise that community programs will also provide to our staff and Vail Inclusive Preschool staff. And then also there was an increase to our employer-paid benefits this year that will, the cost will have to improve as well. Additionally, we have a lot of really awesome consumable products that we use in our preschool classrooms, and everybody's experiencing inflation right now. And so the cost of just those perpetual use of consumable items has just gone up for us. And then lastly, the Arizona Department of Health Safety did away with a grant called the Empower Grant, which was allowing us to be licensed for all of our facilities for $1 every single year. That Empower Grant went away this year, and unfortunately, we are now paying upwards of about $2,750 per program to be licensed every year instead of every 3 years as it was previously. So not only did the grant go away, but they made it so that fees are due yearly and increase those fees as well. So as you can imagine, that also requires us to have quite a dip into our budget to cover that expense. So this 5% increase will allow us to cover those things that I mentioned to you. We also did a cost analysis and made sure that we were staying within the market rate value for the services that we provide. And I'm super proud to present to you and share with you that we're actually still under, even with the increase, under the market rate value for commensurate services in our community.
With that, I'll go ahead and make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve the 2024-2025 community programs and Vail Inclusive Preschool tuition fees as presented.
Thank you, Mr. Cruz. I'll accept the motion.
I'll move.
Mrs.
I'll
Patton
second.
and Mrs. Anderson seconds. Any comments or questions? I really appreciate that you gave us kind of that market analysis piece. It's always helpful to know where we stand and that we're able to not only be competitive, but offer a significantly lower option to families in our community. Thank you for that. Thank you for being mindful of that as you weighed all of the increases that it takes to run a preschool. With that, I'll go ahead and call for the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 2023-2024 301 school goals. Mr. Group.
Thank you, President Tippett and members of the board. Mrs. Penn.
Good evening, President Tippett, Mr. Cruz, members of the board. In late fall of 2023, we brought to you the 301 goals that have been developed at each site. These goals are in alignment with our district goals and are created with the input and support of the teachers. Then they are taken to site council where they are presented and voted on and approved by site councils. We brought all of these goals to you to keep you informed and to have them approved as well. Tonight, what I'm bringing back to you is a report on how those goals were met. This is the first year in the last handful of years where we have had all of the goals met. Specifically with the 301. Continue on with our next item as well. So each of those goals were met. Both of the goals were met. That's this year.
So I'm happy to make the recommendation the Vail School District Governing Board approve, accepts the reports from the schools regarding the school's 301 goals and approve payments accordingly as presented.
I'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve as presented.
Mr. Buster moves.
I'll second.
And Mrs. Anderson seconds. Any comments or questions?
Congratulations to all the schools, because I did notice, obviously it's my second year, but like, I remember that not all of them were met last year, so I was just thrilled. It was something that I just had looked through before the meeting, and I'm just glad to see that, so congratulations to all of them. Yeah.
As Mrs. Penn was talking, I did look up when Prop 301 was passed, and it was 2001, so it has been 24 years. It's just to reiterate what we've talked about here before, it's tied to a 0.5-cent sales tax, primarily for performance and teacher pay.
Well, I'm grateful, number one, for their abilities and performance. And grateful that we get to approve across the board here. So any other comments or questions? With that, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda that goes along with this is the 2023-2024 site leadership goals. Mr. Kruth.
Mrs. Penn.
Similar to the 301 goals, our site leader incentive program and goals were studied and approved earlier this year. Actually, it was last year, late fall of 2023. These goals are developed with the site leadership team. They're in alignment with the 301 goals, so that they support the 301 goals and in alignment with our district goals. As with the 301 goals this year, all of the site leadership goals were met. You may notice on the background that there is a difference in some of the schools where all 301 goals at sites comprise 2 goals and payment is accordingly. With our site leadership goals, they can choose between 2 and 4 depending on the needs of their site, and the set amount is divided among the number of goals that they need. So that's why there's a difference. Some sites selected to just have the exact same goals as their 301. Some sites had an additional goal. And all of those goals were met, and we're bringing that to you tonight to share that good news and to have you be able to take action.
And with that, I'll recommend that the Vail School District Governing Board approve or accept reports from schools regarding principal goals and approve payments accordingly as presented.
I'll accept a motion. Mrs. Anderson moves.
Yes, I'll move. I motion.
Seconded.
Mr. Buster seconds. Thank you. Any comments or questions? Great, congratulations to our leaders for their leadership. I'll go ahead and call for the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is 2024-2025 Educational Enrichment Plan. Mr. Kruger.
Thank you, President Tippett and members of the board. You are intimately familiar with our Educational Enrichment Plan program, as you are all part of the scoring team that helps with that process. It is every year it is worth noting the unique aspect of our educational enrichment programs and the high quality extracurricular options that these programs provide our students, one, and two, the method by then which we are able to pay our teachers who lead or shepherd those programs. It's just, it's incredible. It is a boatload of work, and it is very unique and very Vail. And there were 386 plans submitted this past year. Per our requirement, the scoring committee is comprised of a teacher and principals and board members. So I just want to acknowledge those teachers and principals and all of the board members who participated in that. Brittany Davis, Elizabeth Select, Maggie Gamble, Carla Dominique, Kim Farr, as well as principals, Chris Widosh, Ken Graff, Kendra Forgas, Dean Norris, Isaac Walco, and Jeff Parks, as well as each of the 5 members of the governing board. It takes hours to go through those 386 plans and then thoughtfully review them and score them. A total of 5,013 points were awarded. Those points are each converted into a dollar amount. It's $200 per if the recipient or the person who wrote that turns that into a cash amount, or a $300 amount if they take it in Vail vouchers, which they can purchase materials for their classroom, attend conferences, and or use it, which is primarily done for professional development advancement for master's degree and advanced coursework. Those 5,000 points equate to somewhere a bit north of $1 million that all goes directly into teachers' pockets. So it's huge. So with that, I'll make the recommendation that the Vail School District Governing Board approve educational enrichment plans and recommended point values as presented.
I'll accept the motion.
Moved.
Ms. Pratt moves.
Seconded.
Mr. Buster seconds. Any comments or questions? Mr. Buster?
Although this is only my second year of doing this, I've seen that the program is constantly under improvement, and I definitely appreciate that. So the process is more streamlined, more so than it was last year. And my understanding plans to take it to the next level and make it more streamlined in the future. So definitely a labor of love and greatly appreciate.
Any other comments or questions? Mrs. Pratt?
I can't not say something. I just love the program. I love reading them. This year I did high school, and I typically do K-8 or either elementary or middle. And so it was fun to see some of the different programs that are being offered, some of the different clubs and plans. And I love the whole process. I think it's such a great way to be able to pay teachers for the extra things that they provide. And then working with a committee together, it just is a lot of time for everybody involved, but everybody's committed, and it's just I think it's fun to participate in. I know it's a lot of time, but it's just a great process. So thanks to all who put in a lot of time.
Any other comments or questions? I really enjoy reading the uniqueness of any of the plans. Some of them are things that we're all very familiar with, but some of them are really creative and unique and really showcase the individual talents of and passions of that teacher, and getting them having the opportunity to teach their love of crocheting to the next generation of future crocheters. I'm not sure if that's the right word for that. For example, and so it's I really appreciate the authenticity of this process and the opportunity to just be creative in serving kids. So with that, I'll go ahead and call for the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any, the motion carries. Next item on the agenda is adjournment. We blew through that agenda. Mr. Buster moves and Mrs. Anderson seconds. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Not seeing any. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah.